Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. And we're a little after 6 o'clock. And I'll bring what's today? November 13th, December 11th. Geez, I'm looking at the wrong piece. December 11th, 2024, Park Authority Board meeting to order. Our first committee meeting. Bill, is yours.
All right. Call the Communications and Community Engagement Committee to order. And I think we have a presentation.
Yes.
All right, you're up.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, to Mr. Chairman and members of the board and the co-chairman of the Communications Committee. Glad to be here. My name
Is your mic on?
is it on?
None of them have the color.
Yeah, mine's
Green.
on now.
Either on now. Here. Mic check 1, 2.
You're up.
All right, I'll start over. Good evening, everyone. My name is Deidre Grayson, Marketing and Communications Division Director, and I am happy to be before you today to walk you through a first edition of a SWOT analysis over my first 6 months here at the Fairfax County Park Authority. SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats, and given my external experience, thought that it would be great to bring this forward for information and to share as we move forward as a team, but also as an agency. Key inputs have mainly been observation, but also pre-COVID studies that we have done so that I can see exactly how far we've come. So excited to get right in. Next slide, please. Before we jump into the analysis itself, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. I come to the Park Authority with over 20 years of experience in advertising, marketing, and media, and I have a unique vantage point, if you will, from both ad agency, brand, and also publisher, which gives me a lot of insight and new ways to reach different consumer audiences. I've been able to grab a few awards along the way in creative effectiveness, growing brand awareness, multicultural outreach, integration, and even in casting as well as production. So really excited to bring forth all of these experience to the Fairfax County Park Authority and hope that the agency benefits. A few notes. We talk a lot about brand awareness and elevation and wanted to share some key wins over the course of my career at the SCIM, which was where I was recently the VP of brand marketing. I was able to grow brand awareness for the master brand over the course of 9 months and grow familiarity as well among millennial women, which is what our primary audience was. The key thing too is we were able to split our segments so that we make sure that we provide culturally relevant messages and products to women within the BIPOC community. And we were able to grow familiarity and awareness within those groups 5 points in such a short amount of time. Shea Moisture, same thing. They weren't in market since probably about 2017. And they brought on board a new couple of agencies and myself to really build a campaign that reflects the muse, which at the time was the African American woman. And through that campaign, I was able to grow brand salience and meaning 19 points year over year. Of course, to be fair, we also launched during COVID. So everyone was stocking up on shampoo and toilet paper, and we were no different, but having a campaign and market definitely helped. And with that, because we were a sustainable brand and one of the first under the Unilever umbrella, we were able to grow the Sustainable Living Index up 10 points. So just wanted to share a couple of wins that I've been able to do or accomplish over the course of my career, in addition to working with McDonald's for quite a few years, Coca-Cola, Walmart, and then cutting my teeth on recruitment efforts for the United States Navy. So you may be familiar with the line of, you might wonder how I got here. So wanted to take a bit of a step back into time and share the past org chart where a lot of the disciplines under marketing and communications now were split. They were split between the two deputy directors with Judy, who we were so happy to have, and we're so happy to also see float into retirement. And enjoy it. She led a lot of our comms work, comms, web, and social to be specific, along with some brand management with RMD. And then under Park Services, we had marketing underneath that particular team with creative and marketing and analytics falling underneath there. So what I'm really grateful for is the foresight to bring a lot of these disciplines together so that it could be a more integrated approach. And we can go into the next slide, where the DO's office brought us together. So I am under Deputy Director Amy Vosper, and I have the pleasure of leading a team that is not only considered MarCom, but true to discipline when it comes to integrated marketing communications. So I have a few team members here. Roberta Corzin leads our marketing and analytics lead. Say hi. Raise your hand.
Sure.
And a lot of the efforts when it comes to our integrated campaign and promotions fall under her and her team. They definitely serve as division liaisons between RMI, Park Services, and Golf. And not just campaign and promotional plans, which takes up quite a bit of effort. We also have market research. So not just surveying our audience, but also really understanding where the opportunities are between our lines of businesses. We activate email, some CRM. I think we activated Google reviews over the last year, which have been really insightful in terms of helping us optimize our operations in real time. And as mentioned, site communications and liaisons between the divisions. We also have Ben Boxer, which you all know Ben. He is our communications lead and public information officer. Under his team, they manage quite a bit as well. Communications is really the headline, but board, media, stakeholder, crisis, you name it, it floats through his team and often through the rest of the branches as well. Community outreach, ribbon cuttings, public meetings, events, everywhere you've seen him over the course of his time here at the Park Authority falls under his umbrella. And FOIA, Park Mail, public input, and last but certainly not least, social media. We have made such headway in this space across platforms, and it's one of the key points of entry for a lot of our audience in terms of organic growth. And we lead the county in a lot of our social media efforts. So kudos there. Then we have Cindy Fortuno, who's also with us. Cindy is a vet here. She leads our creative services team. One word, Park Takes. Not the only word, but a big word. Park Takes falls under her leadership, the development and the production of it, the growth, the optimization of it. This is a print magazine that has been a source of truth for our community, and it begins and in some cases ends with her team. In addition to that, brand identity, logos, fonts, colors, general brand guidance, creative content, photo and video, and then graphic design with the flyers that you see on site that falls under her team as well. And last and certainly not least, especially since he's on holiday, we're all jealous, Don Tubel is our web and digital technology lead. So anything that you see on the Park Authority website or any of our pages goes through his team. Digital content management and optimization. We're always trying to figure out ways to streamline communications on all of our webs and pages. That starts with his team as well. Site operational and communication updates, as well as being the liaison between IT, DIT, and our partner Rec Dynamics from a marketing standpoint. So this is the team that I am very, very proud to lead here at the Park Authority. And if we can go to the next slide. All of that expertise is intended to create a center of brand excellence and stewardship. So back in October, end of October, November, we all got together and had a team retreat where we were able to kind of work through as a new-ish team, work through our purpose, which will be revealed. But the core of the mission is to be a center of brand excellence. When you look at a lot of the brands like Coca-Cola, like McDonald's, like Walmart, this is the nucleus of the comms work. And we already have that. This is just a formality, but there's a way for us to kind of formalize that going forward. We support a lot. So a lot of times we have tons of inbound communications. And of course, when you press send on a request, you don't have visibility in all of the other requests that we may get. So wanted to kind of plant or present the universe that we support on a day-to-day basis. We, of course, have our divisional partners in addition to the DO's office. And then we have you all as the Park Authority Board. We have the media. We have our advocates and our friends groups. We have other county agencies that we support. And then last and certainly not least, we have our neighbors. And so we are here every day rolling up our sleeves, ready to take in and answer questions or provide effective communication so that everyone knows how to engage with us. Next slide, please. So before we get into the analysis, I want to level set because I want to be transparent about the sensitivities that we have at the moment when looking at some of the opportunities. We want to review the Park Authority's marketing and communications strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats for business to consumer growth. And I say B2C specifically because there are B2B opportunities that have yet to be explored, but we already kind of dabble in that area with ad sales for park takes and other ways that we monetize. But this particular SWOT analysis is specific to B2C, and it's both short and long-term growth. So we know we're in the midst of a budget season. We know that we want to make sure that we are equitable. So a lot of these definitely won't happen tomorrow, but it's planting a seed to explore the next day. Next slide. Starting with our strengths. So I started to kick this analysis off with when people have an issue or a question, they know where to find us. But that translates to there is meaning and positive sentiment behind our brand. People know the FCPA, they know the Shield, they have stories and anecdotes about interacting with the brand or with one of our sites. And even though it hasn't been recently measured, we know that that exists. And there's a lot of magic in that, and we can capture that in our communications. And with that said, we have a competitive, trusted, and award-winning system. I mean, one of the opportunities is we don't brag enough. We do so much good work. We have so many awards, and we have so many great people and so many great consistent patrons that come and support. And there's a way to tell those stories without, doing too much, if you will. But it's something that we should definitely be proud of and celebrate in our communications. And I'm just going to highlight a couple due to time. But the other one is we have a highly engaged existing audience across channels and sites. When you talk to our site teams, you know that there's a consistent traffic that comes through, an expectation with the standard of excellence that we provide at the site level. We also have that same level of engagement on our email list, on our park takes list, social media across Facebook, Instagram, X, as mentioned, and soon to be Nextdoor. So we know that there's an audience that is willing to stay and grow with us, and we have definitely planted our eggs in the right baskets in focusing on loyalty and retention over the last few years. A couple others, just to be really quick, is we have a very strong rapport with local media outlets, network and independent, and we have support. We know it's not just us alone. We have the support of our community and our stakeholders, the Board of Supervisors and beyond, and that has benefited us in great ways, especially in communications. Next slide. Now, weaknesses. I also give the caveat, don't get nervous because it's a lot more weaknesses than strengths on the previous slide, but there's more opportunities. So we're only going up. Weaknesses. And I won't say this is a weakness because this decision was done with intention. But right now we pretty much focus on lower funnel marketing. And what I mean is we focus on the audience that we have and we turn them over and build frequency amongst our sites right now. And that is due to managing capacity and resources, and it's necessary. However, as we talk about inequity, how Fairfax County is changing and it's growing, we know Fortune 100 and 500 companies are coming here every single day, which means that people are moving here. So that's an opportunity to reintroduce or introduce ourselves to new people and return to full funnel and get them back at the top via awareness building tactics. So we'll talk about that in a few. This is not unfamiliar, but we're currently a house of brands. So while there has been headway with our beautiful redwood signs and even some of our merchandise, our web pages, even in a lot of our events, we have these beautiful flags that show up in our podiums. We don't really have a cohesive brand presence beyond that. And we have an opportunity to expand that so that everyone knows when and where they're on an FCPA site. Right now, we have a lot of logos. Cindy probably sees my head spinning right now, but we have a lot of logos. And there's not as anything wrong with having logos, but what we don't have is a clear visual leader that says FCPA is the authority. And visually, I can tell by the hierarchy on this flyer or on this poster or in a great world on this out-of-home billboard, whatever that may look like. So we have an opportunity to kind of build that architecture so that people understand what the relationship is with all of our logos. The other weakness, which is also an opportunity, is because we focus primarily on lower funnel marketing, we don't have presence in the market beyond our sites, which limits audience growth and could stunt market share. So everyone is tired of me talking about this story, but a couple of weeks ago, I was pulling off of 50 and I saw a connector bus and it was wrapped in West Virginia parks messaging. And I was like how you can, it was something like start your parks here. And I was like, you drive past X amount of, so many parks just to get to West Virginia. And also selfishly, they're on our turf. So we have an opportunity to get in market and build awareness about the fact that on your way to West Virginia, you pass X amount of parks. And so the team is tired of me talking about that as an example, and hopefully we get there. But that made me or reinforced the idea that being in the market is just as important as having clear brand presence at our sites.
Did you get the license plate number that?
I was trying to get it. Right. A few other things before we move on to opportunities that we've honestly already started talking about, but I mentioned we do have strong brand awareness and affinity for FCPA, but we have limited capability to measure, and we have an opportunity to bring on some of those third-party partners to actually tell us how many people know about us, what they feel about us, and hopefully define what that brand love is for FCPA. We also do a lot of external comms, a lot of press releases, a lot of events, push with low to no ROI for the organization or community. I know a lot is requested, but we want to make sure that it's something that we get credit for and it adds to brand value while we're planning and selecting which ones are priority. You see, we don't brag enough on there to be plain, but we're also not mobile first. And I caveat that because we have amazing mobile solutions thanks to the progressive efforts of the golf division. We also have our web optimized for mobile use. But when it comes to pushing out marketing messages, or specifically the mobile devices, which is where everyone is spending their time as the third screen, now probably the first screen, we're not there yet. And so a lot of times those snap decisions are made on your device. And if we're not there either organically or programmatically, we miss out on the opportunity. So we've already started to talk about the opportunities. I mentioned going from lower funnel marketing to returning to full funnel marketing. And again, this is over time. But there are, we may even have some, staff members, and I'm being new to the market, I can say this too. You could drive down the street and you may not know that you're passing a rec center or a beautiful park. And there's a way to kind of reintroduce all of our offerings to our community, new and existing, and returning to full funnel marketing will allow for that. There's an element of full funnel marketing too, and lower funnel marketing that leaves space for personalization and customization. And that is one thing that people, even you probably who shop, are very much used to. When you're Christmas shopping and you're buying your gifts and you choose something for your family member, and then you get a follow-up email that says, oh, hey, if you bought this, then you like this. Or if you're watching Netflix's, if you watch this, then you like this. We want to be able to engage those particular functionalities as well, from the top of the funnel all the way down to the bottom. So we have an opportunity there. There's also the opportunity to have a macro narrative. And when I say a macro narrative, we've done this during bond season. And we have the opportunity to give it a longer life. So yes, there's a campaign tagline. Yes, there's even like campaign taglines, but even maybe annual taglines that we may use. But how do we create one that has a longer life and has meaning to our audience. And then ultimately from that macro narrative or tagline, everything that we do is a proof point. So that will ultimately lift the visibility of all of the other divisional offerings that we have, and everyone will have to say something different. So if it's Parks for All, like how do we pay that off in our programming and our efforts and our investments? You know, who we see in our sites and outside. So there's an opportunity there. And honestly, we're getting there as we prepare for next year. I mentioned paid marketing plan. I want to get back at West Virginia, but I'll wait my turn. We also, I think, Mike, you mentioned audience segmentation in a previous meeting. There was an audience segmentation done quite some time ago. And we have the opportunity to refresh that to understand the county population shifts on a deeper level. So now people are way more transient. Like people aren't just going from one place to another. I mean, staying for 10 to 15 years, you get a job, going to the next place, and you're starting over. And so we need a segmentation to reflect that. And we need to work through that. The good thing is we have Placer AI right now, which is really instrumental in that. And it allows you to break down the county with into key segments based on demographic, geographic, and even some behavioral traits. So that's something that I think will be a good input for our next audience segmentation study. We have the business case already to create the long-term plan from House of Brands to Brand of Houses. So we just need to do it at this point. And what that plan looks like is to come. But I think we are all clear, heads and hearts are aligned that that's a direction that we want to move, and we will figure out a way to get there. Last but certainly not least, we do have a brand book and a really strong brand book. But as I always say, brand books are mostly intended to be iterative because human behavior changes, channels change, how people perceive your identity or your visual assets change. There's a reason why McDonald's dropped I'm Loving It, because it just kind of didn't get any more play. All those people are still around saying it. But that required a refresh of the brand book. Sometimes your colors change. Sometimes there's, other identity kits that convey a level of modernity. So once we publish this new round of the brand book, it's not going to be the end all be all. It has to be iterated on probably a 1 to 2 year basis so that we match the change of consumer behavior. And last but not least, we can bring forth solutions that will help us measure brand awareness, sentiment, and creative effectiveness. Threats, we're almost there. A few threats, some mostly external, and a few that we're keeping our eye on in daily conversation. So when we talk about competitors, there's constant conversation among the divisions about who's popping up, how are they showing up? Are they getting traffic? What do we have to match it? Simulators are a good example of that. Our pools being a huge competitive asset is part of that. But sometimes those competitors evolve faster than we may be able to adapt to match consumer changes and preferences. So not anything to be afraid of, just something to think about. Growing density in the market thanks to private studios and fitness centers. That's another one that is a big deal. I mean, I keep getting targeted by Club Studio and a stretching and fitness lab. And I don't know I do know how they're targeting me, but also I didn't realize that they were popping up in the market so fast. So those types of private fitness or wellness solutions are something to watch. And as we continue to optimize our services, we can continue to communicate them and market them the best way that we can to compete. And with that said, the fast evolution of technology and wellness culture. Before I left the SCIM, we launched a wellness vertical specifically for commerce purposes because everyone wanted to buy into it. And it was built to compete with Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop and Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh. And so it was a lot of, it just proves to you where the money is. So I don't want us to second guess ourselves in that this isn't, big money or, a business opportunity, but it really is. And we have some great services and amenities to offer the community and already are. Last but not least, fragmented attention spans. I think that speaks for itself. And then growing privacy concerns with content features and data. This is important because not just on the data front and, Google and Google suppression and, everyone not necessarily being inspired to open their emails, but just being featured in photos is a concern. We are in a very sensitive area. We have a photographer, and going to shoot people at events may not be the best. It is the best way to capture content, but we have to be sensitive to how we showcase our neighbors in our communications, because everyone might not want to have a digital footprint. Everyone may not necessarily even just want to have their picture taken. So we need to supplement some of those efforts with more stock imagery so that we make sure that we capture the aspiration and the audience that we want to attract, but we also reflect the community that we serve. So just wanted to highlight that, because often it's like point and shoot and then put it in park takes with 200,000 subscribers. The average person might freak out a little bit. But if they don't want to be featured, then we're able to bring in another image to fit the purpose. Next slide, please. With all of those observations, here's what we are thinking for 2025 and beyond. It's a big ship. I looked up how long it takes to turn a ship, and it actually is quicker than it was in my Navy days. So I decided not to use that analogy, but it's a lot.
Depends on the ship.
Depends on what ship. But it is a lot to do, especially when it is when consumer behavior is what inspires change. And so we want to make sure that we are continuing to build the foundation like we have been, but that we give ourselves time and space to move and pull the levers as quickly as we can, where we can. But first is to resume exploration of what a brand of houses looks like. We talk about it a lot, how to move from theory to practice in marketing across all sites. So next year, we hope to get to a point where we have some practical guidance to share internally and externally. We want to create balance between maintaining loyalty and retention, because we have this amazing pool of patrons, but we need to intentionally attract new audiences. Again, people are moving here every day. How do we bring them into our world? We will continue to strategize how to leverage the full park system for competitive advantage with a strong value prop and contribute to revenue growth. Marketing has more potential than engagement, and we have an opportunity to explore what those pathways are to contribute to the agency and the agency's profitability. And then on a very practical level, and probably sooner than later, we will roll out an updated brand book with an asset kit or a system that supports sites and stakeholders. They are our front line. They know the community. They should have some creative liberty in there, but within a framework. And it will help them connect with their surrounding communities authentically on behalf of FCPA. So we're working on that right now. And the next slide is a very kind thank you. These are the beautiful faces on the team at our retreat. And thank you for your time.
Any questions? Ron?
Just a couple. Any marketing plan requires a budget. And I'm assuming your budget for this marketing plan you're putting together is going to be larger than what it has been in the past. The other question was, how do we split the house between the revenue side and the tax supported side when we're dealing with marketing?
Yeah.
Is the umbrella okay to use money from whatever fund is available, or do we have to actually have separate columns for those two houses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. We typically, if it's a revenue fund activity, so if Deidre is promoting rec centers, then that marketing work would come out of the revenue fund. If it's a ribbon cutting for a new playground, the funding for that generally would come out of the general fund. So it depends on the type of communication and marketing that we're doing and what it's supporting.
Yeah. And thank you, Sarah. And back to your first question, yes, if once we get into market and build a plan specifically beyond our sites, it will more than likely require some level of paid, but we already are doing paid on a social level to support our revenue divisions, as well as other efforts that we can build upon going forward. So it shouldn't be sticker shock, if you will, once we present the plan.
Others?
Can I ask one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna note, and some of us may remember this, I know Bill will for sure. As you're going through some of the brand stuff, I would just suggest touching the board at different points during that process, because I believe, I mean, it's been some years. There was an effort to rebrand, and a brand was brought forward that the board really didn't like very much.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of work was done in something that the board was like, yuck.
Yes.
And it would be helpful, I think, to avoid it. I would consider that experience to try to avoid going through it again, because that was a lot of wasted effort, I think, on staff part to end up someplace that we really just didn't like. And so I want to make sure that you're aware of that as a
Yes.
thought process. So.
Thank you. Yes, and the team shared with that, and I was able to review some of the documents. And honestly, I don't think that we need to rebrand per se. One of the notes that I mentioned under opportunities is to test the assets that we have. So some of the distinctive assets, like the shape of the shield, that it could be something that our community knows right off the bat, which means we may elevate it, but don't change it per se. But well
I
received
just
and
wanted to-
understood. Yeah.
As long as that water goes on the right.
No, no,
Doesn't go uphill.
we're not revisiting.
It was a
this.
path.
You don't know.
No, I don't have a
Any
question.
other questions?
No question, just a,
Statement.
yeah, just a comment. Thank you very much, Deidre, for putting this together. I think I asked for this on her second day here. So I've been very excited, looking forward to it. Anxious to see how this stuff rolls out. It's very much needed. So thank you to you and the whole team.
Great job.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.
All right, Ken, you're up.
We'll call the Planning and Development Committee to order.
I'm just gonna note that wasn't an indication that everybody should start bringing their staffs every time.
No, it is on.
Okay, Planning and Development Committee to order. Who's up?
Which one is it? Is this the first or the second one? Okay,
There's nobody.
I'm sorry, that's
Oh,
me.
Amy, okay.
I am
that's fine.
closing down other things. So,
Sorry,
okay.
Amy.
sorry, thank you. Good evening. I'm Amy Vosper, Deputy Director with the Park Authority. Let me see if I can get closer to this microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to bring you an update on Overlook Ridge Park at Lorden Landfill and an update on the public access agreement. Next slide, please. So as you know, the Lorden Landfill is bordered by 95 and Furnace Road right there. Next slide. And on the left is a picture of the original approved site plan. And on the right, you'll see that has a spectacular view all the way to the Potomac. This is a drone perspective, but as you're up there, you can still see part of the Potomac. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background for some of you who have not been here since 1984. The total acreage of the
Like Tim
property.
and I.
The total acreage of the property is 250 acres, and it's a construction and demolition debris landfill, which is a different landfill than other things. It is to become a passive park to be operated by the Park Authority. The previous owner was ESI until 2018, and the current and future owner is Waste Management Incorporated. In 1981, the special exception was approved to operate the landfill. In 1984, their landfill plan was approved. In 2007, they went in for a special exception amendment to increase the height of the landfill, and that's where the park amenities come into play. In 2009, which is what I'm calling the original site plan, that was approved, and where we began to deal with the site as a park not a landfill. Next slide, please. So at the same time, because this landfill was going to become a park, an access agreement was developed in January of 2007. That agreement had the park authority taking ownership of the park. And after extensive discussions and reviews and working with the Office of the County Attorney and Risk Management, it was decided, due to the liability concerns of a park on a landfill, that the park authority would operate the park but not own the park. That agreement was approved by the park board, you all, in May of 2009.
Seems like yesterday.
I know, doesn't it? Next slide. Okay. So fast forward to 2018, when Waste Management takes over the landfill. The landfill starts the shutdown process and the project stalls. In October 2021, the park concept was updated, and Waste Management at that time had liability concerns about the plan and wanted the plan revised to take in their concerns. Things like the downhill bike trails across the entire site were taken off the plan, and amenities were reviewed and changed due to the DEU cap restrictions. In June of 2022, the revised special exception was approved. And in June of 2023, the site plan revision was submitted and approved. So next steps, we have the final approval of the site plan revision in hand, and with it, a revised access agreement is ready for signature. Both the county attorneys and waste management attorneys have been working on this agreement for years now, and Linwood could attest to that. We've been in meetings forever, I believe. But hopefully, if you all approve this agreement, which you have as an attachment, the executive director will be able to have the green light to go ahead and sign the agreement. We'll get this recorded and get this park built. Next slide, please. And that's what we have coming our way. Any questions? What? No.
So we are not taking ownership of this park.
Correct.
Do we have any exposure whatsoever to the capping of the landfill and potential for methane in the
Or
air?
anything else.
Anything
No,
or anything else in that regard? Because
They
that was the discussion and the argument. They wouldn't indemnify us forever. They would
Right.
only indemnify us for, I think it was 45 years or so. So have we taken that discussion completely off the board?
Originally, remember, the original proposal was that we were actually going to take ownership of the landfill. Therefore, we would have ultimate responsibility for everything that had been done there for the last 50 years. We will never take ownership of that landfill now. Waste Management or some other entity that they might sell it to or something.
Sure.
Will always own that and have the responsibility of the methane, any landfill related thing.
Okay.
So it's my understanding that our liabilities now with this agreement are absolutely limited to the activities that are park related, not methane, not landfill, not anything else.
correct.
Not a fair assessment.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what I'm asking is the activity, the passive activities that we do have on that park and those liabilities that still exist for the owner, if it in any way affects anything that we're doing at that park, do we have any exposure to that?
Can I just put a two-finger question on that as well? I mean, we gonna have our branding, and we're just talking about branding, is our branding gonna be on the park? I mean, because I think there is an
Yeah.
implied responsibility for the safety of the park if our sign is.
So that signage was a very key part in the site plan revision, that it's going to have to say that it is owned by Waste Management. There are regulations that have to be upheld to ensure that the cap and every activity on the site stays in place, including fire or anything like that. So there's going to be dual branding. Haven't talked to Adri about that yet. To ensure that it says that it is a park operated, a park authority operated site, but owned by Waste Management. In terms of the indemnification, we have full indemnification and hold harmless for ourselves now in this agreement. The one stickler that it took probably 6 to 8 months, was that because of what your concerns were, and because Waste Management has that responsibility, not the park authority, they wanted to be able to close the park down at any given moment. That was a sticking point for the last probably 6 to 8 months, which we resolved, because if there are issues regarding the cap and DEQ and any modification that they have to make because of that, then that's one scenario. Anything else, they cannot close the park just because they want to close the park. So we resolved that issue in terms of their responsibility to DEQ.
I presume this is the agreement that Jay would sign on behalf of the park authority has been reviewed by the county attorney's office.
It's been written by the county attorney's office.
Even better.
Yes.
Okay, are we,
We did not.
Okay.
Right. It's been-
is it our intent this evening to approve the agreement?
The action item says what? Something to that effect.
Yes. So we had anticipated that Jay would be able to sign the agreement. I was surprised in 2007 that you approved the agreement, a board action to approve the agreement. So we brought it in line with how it was. It's basically a revision to that
And
agreement.
just a clarification, Mike, I think the slide said to approve subject to final review by OCA, by the Office of the County.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking is, I read through it and we were talking about this earlier. I was kind of like, okay, yeah, county attorney clearly is involved in this. But if there are questions about it, it would seem to me that may be a closed session with a county attorney in the room.
Maybe if there are questions.
Your question.
That well, based on an earlier conversation, I thought there might be, which is why I was.
Okay, I mean,
asking.
that's fine. And if that's the case,
There
but
might- there
so
might
far,
not
I
be. I
think
was just-
everybody's questions have been answered.
Question. So in the agreement, it says that we agree to provide, but it does give us liability if our park users get into the currently operating portions of the landfill. So the park that's operating still as a landfill, we have the duty to keep people out of there. It also says that we are providing security to ensure that there are no trespassers that are getting onto the park, doing the park proper, doing unauthorized activities like ATV activities, that kind of thing. So I guess this is more of a question because I don't know what our security capacities are. But do we
Cameras,
What's that?
cameras, wildlife cameras,
So it's like a passive security kind of.
passive security, which is what they have instigated on the site at this point in time as well. That Waste Management has.
It actually says that we're liable for, any damage that any injuries or damage that they sustain. I mean, does the camera give us, do we have someone monitoring the camera to make sure that it's like a rapid response kind of thing if there's a situation happening or?
So we did have the whole team and both sets of attorneys had quite a bit of discussion on this with the new police station close by with the cameras on site. Waste Management was kind of uber worried about that. We have gates to lock the gates are now actually right there on site already. There are bollards and things that we can put in place that they have not yet done that until it's our part, until we're operating the park. But we have mechanisms to reduce the risk involved in trespassers. Right now, they have seen trespassing because it's a totally vacant site. Based on what we've asked for in the future for operating this site, we hope to have personnel on site or close by, kind of managing the whole area.
Amy, following up on Laura's question, when all this is completed, will that waste management area be completely fenced off? So people can't?
All areas that are waste management maintained or monitored are going to be fenced in and enclosed with a pretty large chain link fence
So
around.
if somebody climbs, one of our visitors climbs the fence and injures himself on the waste management property, where do we stand?
You're responsible for it. That's what it says in the agreement.
Well, I want to make sure that that's.
Let me ask a question
Makes sense.
for perspective that I don't actually know the answer to, so it's not a leading question or anything like that. Wouldn't this end up being like any other park that we have, in that the landfill part that is not designated as a park is what we're responsible for? If somebody does damage to a neighbor, yes, we have some liability for the neighbor's property just because our park was there and we didn't put a fence between them or something like that. Would this be different than that?
Yeah, I think that's ultimately the real question is what liabilities are we taking on that would be any different than any other park that we were operating in any way? And have they, the only one that's, it'd be to your point earlier, it'd be the capping, the stuff that's underneath doing something weird that theoretically they're going to cover. But the operational liability seems to be very similar to any other park we have.
I mean, the agreement's kind of interesting, and it actually lists out all of these potential scenarios, and it says like whether they have responsibility or whether we have responsibility. But I mean, I think it's worth looking at it again. I just took a quick glance at it, but it does say things like if deer get, damage the fences or damage their operations, that we're responsible for it. That if our visitors damage things, that we're responsible for it, and and for any injury. It also says that we agree to support amendments. It's kind of strange language.
All right, before we get in the nitty gritty here, given that this was written by the county attorney's office and knowing how risk averse they are, I'm not particularly concerned with whatever the agreement said. But where is the rest of the board? Because I don't think grilling Amy, who is not a lawyer, didn't write the document, is going to prove particularly fruitful. So if the board is generally not comfortable at this point voting for it, then we need to have the county attorney come back in. But I don't know where anybody is generally. I'm perfectly fine moving forward, but you certainly have reservations.
Yeah.
But I don't know where.
This has been in the county attorney's hands, written by the county attorney in the risk management for Fairfax for years. But we can,
And on our behalf.
yes,
So they are acting as a
as our
attorney for
attorney
the
for us.
We have fiduciary responsibility as members of the board to, I mean, that's why you guys are running a bias, right? Is to point out the challenges. So
Sure.
I'm just pointing out the challenges. I mean,
So I think
You guys
if depending on where the board is, we can ask the county attorney to come. And
Is there any great harm in delaying this until our first meeting in January?
this is already December, isn't it?
Yes.
January.
So what, I don't remember,
Or more
what- I
importantly,
don't remember what our
In the
January,
next year.
January 8th.
is there any great harm in, I mean, it's not even 30 days.
You all have to be comfortable with it.
So why don't we,
But
why don't we have the county attorney's office come back? We'll do a closed session. We can ask and make sure everyone is comfortable.
Yeah, may I just add a point of clarification? Along the point that Jonah made and Amy made, our risk is actually covered by the county's risk management program. So
It is,
if there
but
is
is our
that
name
liability,
attached to it?
it would have our name attached to it, but
Because
they pay for it, so it's not.
It's all taxpayer dollars at that
I
point.
know. And if they're saying that it's okay along those lines and they're prepared to manage that risk, I'm for one, I'm prepared to go along.
And frankly, our exposure, our main exposure, even though the county is covering it, is much, much higher of somebody hurting themselves on part of our facility that we're managing, that we're responsible, that we're every playground, every jungle gym,
Sure.
everything else, that's gonna bring a lot more liability in
Sure.
dollars risk than something damaged
I'm-
on.
Yeah,
on
so that's fine.
On the cap and stuff
We'll
like
have the
that.
county attorney's office come in on
I'm not
the
opposed to
the
delay.
January 8th, so we'll just delay this. We'll move on to the next item and we'll bring this back
Just,
up.
but just have no illusion that we do not have any
Sure that will be.
liability risk in the activities that we.
Right,
do.
and yes, there's risk and liability potential and everything, but let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so that's been delayed.
Yep.
Hey, Williamsville Park.
New slide, right? I think we only have a local. We have a local one? Yeah, perfect. Real quick, because I noticed of time, Park Development is here today requesting approval to transfer the previous approved 20,000 Maston Brook volunteer matching grant from Linway Terrace Park to Lewinsville Park on behalf of McLean Little League. McLean Little League is pivoting from converting a diamond field at Linway to Lewinsville due to the availability of lighting and return on investment. The funds will help convert the existing grass diamond field to synthetic at Lewinsville. With your approval today, this project is scheduled to start design and permit immediately with hopes delivering the conversion by summer 2026.
Questions? That's consensus to move this forward?
Yep.
No-brainer. Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's
Okay,
interesting
the,
that they're gonna do that field, because that's,
Development Committee is hereby.
that's the big diamond. That's
Right.
You're still on, and yeah. It's significantly more expensive.
significantly more expensive.
Right.
Okay, I'll call the Budget Committee to order.
Yeah.
We could be like.
If we don't put.
Yeah, there we go.
They don't have lights. That's-
Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Quincy. Michael Peter, Division Director for Business Administration Division here, along with Kelly Sackett, our Strategic Budget Coordinator. We have a couple of items to bring forward tonight. Both of them are requests for action. The first item, this is essentially a follow-on to something we had discussed and had an action item a couple of meetings ago. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are seeking, as you also saw in your packet, to reallocate $400,000 from what is currently the overall Mount Vernon Rec Center project. We're reallocating that we're asking to reallocate that not to shortchange anything with Mount Vernon, but as we went through this process, it became very clear that certain funds that were tied up in the CIP project could not be expended on things like operating supplies and ice skates and things like that. So we had used funding from our revenue sinking fund, which we use for replenishment and repair, things like that, to be able to purchase these things. And now we're asking to be able to reimburse that, to move these funds around. Next slide, please. So this will not have any impact on the completion of Mount Vernon, nor will it have any financial impact on the overall $76 million budget. This is really just moving this around and continuing to accomplish what we need to be able to open on time and fully supplied later in the spring. Any questions or anything?
Questions on this? Okay, consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn it over to Kelly to talk about our favorite subject, fees. Now that we are at the end of our public comment period, she'll go through the next step. So please, Kelly.
As Mike just said, we're going to review the results of the public comment period from October 30th to November 29th. Slide. Just a reminder of the calendar. Obviously, we're here December 11th to ask for approval for the fee increases. Our approach to the public comment advertising was basically the same that it's been in the past, with one exception. We did not hold a public meeting. There were 2,102 views on the website, with 39 general, what we call non-specific comments, 31 specific comments. And so the total of comments to views was about 3.3%. We also had some of the typical agencies such as WTOP, news agencies, and Annandale Today pick up the story, but no one did reach out to us before those stories were run. Slide, please. So the total comments were 70. We had 13 positive comments, 23 neutral comments, and 34 negative comments. As you can see, the positive and neutral comments were about 51%, where the negative was about 49%. Neutral comments, I'm sorry, let's start with positive. Positive comments basically revealed support for the fee increases, and people cited that they appreciate the amenities that we provide. Neutral comments were things that were not actually on the fee schedule, such as people would ask to have non-resident pricing across the board, and some people were asking that we don't start charging fees for hiking. So that's what we considered a neutral comment. And the majority of the negative comments, I will say, were centered on the economy, inflation, everything that we've been experiencing over the past few years. So it was kind of not a surprise. If they then would cite something about the fees, we consider that a negative comment about the fees, but the majority of them really kind of centered around the economy as it currently is. Next slide, please. So again, we kind of narrowed it into 4 themes based on the volume of comments. Economic and inflation concerns being number 1. The fee increases are opposed due to the overall economic situation, inflation, and the fact that salaries are not keeping pace with the rising costs of living. Many residents find that living in Fairfax County is already expensive, and so they were feeling a bit negative about the fee increases. Number 2 was suggestions for cost management. People were trying to be very helpful here. They were saying, instead of raising fees, maybe we could reduce management and administrative costs within the park authority. They suggested redirecting the funds to maintenance and operations instead of overhead. Number 3 was support for the fee increases. Many commenters appreciated the quality of Fairfax County parks and agree that the fee increases are necessary to ensure the proper maintenance and improvement of the facilities. They view the parks as an important community resource worth funding. Finally, the last majority of the comments centered around facility and service quality issues. Comments reflected a perception that the quality and maintenance of the facilities are not keeping pace with the rising fees, leading to dissatisfaction and calls for improvement before people wanted to pay any fee increases. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder. You saw a similar slide when we met back in October. Our goals for our revenue fund, we are always trying to increase our sinking fund so that we can be able to cover significant expenses and cover the critical deferred maintenance. We'll also discuss that again in a moment. The next would be to meet our revenue stabilization reserve target of 10%. And finally, we need to plan for unexpected expenses such as MRI, operational costs, and capital.
If I can just add in there as well, we monitored the recent joint budget discussions between our board and the school board. And of course, they are projecting a $300 million shortfall. But also, buried within that is an assumption right now that there would be a 2% MRA. And then there would also be funding, not for the revenue fund, but funding for the performance-based increases as well. So right now, that's within what we had forecasted for next year. What happens politically, we'll see what happens.
So again, just.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
2% MRA is what you built on. Where are you basing that off of?
The previous year.
But now that the county has the labor agreement, I guess maybe that's not for the entire population. So it might matter less. But I'm just thinking, I thought there were scheduled raises built into that agreement. No?
There is no agreement with the county staff yet. It
It's
is
just public
safety.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no,
And the school board has one.
Yeah, but I don't care about that
yeah,
one.
no bargaining partner has gotten the, no bargaining partner has gotten
But
the
that's just
required
public
vote.
safety that
Yeah.
they, okay, all right, so we've got to base it on, all right, fair enough. Carry on.
We discussed this again in our last meeting. We do have a balanced approach to our revenue growth. So it's just a reminder that although we have to look at fee increases when necessary, we do take other approaches simultaneously to minimize the need for fee increases. Slide, please. And again, another reminder, and it was brought up by the public, is some of the deferred maintenance that we need to pay attention to. And these numbers have actually been updated with some of the new estimates that we knew that we were going to have to adjust due to assessments. But just a reminder that unfortunately, the costs are rising, and with our assets, some of our assets reaching the end of their life, they are requiring some maintenance and renovations.
Just a point again on this chart, as I recall, the prior chart was 176 million.
Yes, so we updated it again as we're continuing to move through our condition assessments throughout the system. You can already see just a little glimpse in there as we updated numbers for trails and bridges, as well as a little bit more for the rec centers, the impact that it had. And we do expect that to continue to increase as we complete these assessments.
So that only point that I'm making is we are continuing to gradually fall farther and farther behind.
And then,
No, and doesn't need to be now, but do we know that 67 for rec centers, of the 2 rec centers that are currently on the theorized 2026 bond, how much of that is anything related to those 2, which would conceivably then be caught up with the bond?
We'll get back to you on that.
We know that number, but we don't.
Yeah,
Curious.
yeah, but that would be part of it.
but to what Tim was saying, that the new number is just based on more things getting old, not a reassessment of how expensive that doing something maybe 3% more expensive than we thought it was when we last looked at the number.
That's correct. This is a baseline. We haven't
No, I'm just saying, so, I mean, this number is just
Yeah, it's
it's a low starting.
Exactly. Now we're getting inside of things. And, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Again, we saw a similar slide our last meeting, but as a reminder, other than the general comments that we received from the public, we did receive the majority of our comments regarding the center increases. I want to remind everyone that we have not had a fee increase with our rec center since 2015, and that includes our skate parks as well. So just
The memberships, right? I mean, we've done like some of the rooms and some of that other junk at different times.
Yeah, but not for the rec center.
Right, no, just, all right.
correct. So despite, again, the increasing revenue, we increasing membership, we have continued to have negative revenue up till 2024, where we squeaked by just barely positive. Also keep in mind that 100% of the rec center operations are supported by the fees and charges. Next slide, please. And again, another reminder that without these fee increases, we're not going to be able to approach our goal of $4 million. We're still remaining negative, but looking into 2025, we would feel the full effect of the almost $2.1 million from these fee increases. So last slide, please. So given the financial realities of the Park Authority, the executive director recommends that the Park Authority board approve all proposed fee adjustments as advertised to ensure sustainability of the revenue and operations fund. They're requesting that we have board action to have approval, and the fee changes would take effect at the beginning of January 2025.
Questions, comments?
Just one at-large kind of question. The comments you kind of walk through, that's everything we received from related to the fees. It's not, I asked this because the way it made it seem is like there were an X number of views of some web page and the comments were of that. But they come in any other way, or is?
There were 2 additional comments that we received after the finalization of this presentation
But it's not.
via email, and they were sent to me. And I'd say of those 2, they were.
No, I was just wondering if, like, I don't know, the park mail inbox got flooded or anything like that. So, okay, so
No.
that is really
To people
to that, okay. So that is literally the sum total of everything we know. Okay. Copy that.
Other questions, comments? Census, move this forward?
Yes.
Okay. That said, thanks. Thank you all. Budget committee is hereby adjourned.
All right, and then we are in recess till about 7:30.
Yeah, it's just the.
See, I cannot hear anything.
Yeah.
The
Be live again.
Are we recording?
Yep. All right, we are back in session. Before we get started, though, we do have one member joining us remotely, so I will read him in. Virginia law authorizes remote participation of board members, provided that a policy exists to ensure that such remote participation is consistently administered. This board has approved policy 111. Any such remote attendance must be approved by the board as long as a physical quorum of the board is actually present. Voice of the remote participant is able to be heard by everyone in the room, and the remote participation comports with the policy. So step one is to verify the remote participant's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for the meeting room with a confirmation of their location. So Faisal, are you connected to this meeting remotely?
Yes, I'm at my work in Providence District.
That would be a no.
Here's
Hello?
There he is.
Yes. Can you guys, yeah.
All right.
Can you
I
hear me
can
now?
hear you. Yep.
Yes. So I'm at my work in Providence District.
Can you state your name, please?
Faisal Khan. I'm joining from my work in Providence District.
Great. Thank you very much. I move that Mr. Khan's voice may be adequately heard from his location.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Part two is to verify the remote participant's physical absence. Oh, Dr. Carter's here.
Oh, great.
He is here.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Carter, can you please state your name and from where you are calling?
Yes, Cynthia Jacobs Carter, calling from my home in Franconia District.
Great. Do I have a second for the motion?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Now we move on to step two. Verify that the remote participant's physical absence comports with the policy. Pursuant to the Park Authority's Policy 111 for remote participation in public meetings, I move that Faisal Khan and Dr. Cynthia Jacobs Carter be permitted to participate remotely in this meeting because it comports with the policy we adopted, and a physical quorum is present here at the Park Authority Boardroom, 9th floor, Heritage Building.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion also carries, and I believe that's it, right? All right, so we can get into the agenda for this evening. Ben, do we do the presentation before or after public comment?
According to the agenda, public comment would begin.
Okay. All right, let me ask you, do we have any speakers this evening?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Ben Boxer, Public Information Officer. We do not have anyone signed up to speak tonight. So
Okay. All right, well then we'll get right into the presentation. We have an audit summary from our external auditors. They want to come on up.
You get perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. We're here to present audit results of fiscal year 24 audit for Fairfax Park Authority. So we do have a presentation in front of us. Both me and Zach. My name is Malo Shat. I'm the audit partner. Remembers few familiar faces from last year, but glad to be back. Last year was my first year on FCPA, and this will be my second year. Zach is the manager on the audit, and he's been working on FCPA for a number of years now. So glad to be here. So if we can I control it or you can? Next page. Yes. We talked about this. Next slide. Slide, please. Perfect. So this is kind of the summary of the audit results. So the Parks Authority received an unmodified opinion, which means it's the highest level of assurance we as independent auditors can provide that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. Just a point of difference here, that's a reasonable assurance. It's not an absolute assurance that they're free from material misstatement, partly because we can't audit each and every transaction that happens through the Parks Authority. We do a sample of those transactions, and based on those testing, it's a reasonable in there. We also audited under the government auditing standards. Those required under the government audit standards, we didn't identify any non-compliance. We also audit under the APA, the Virginia Public Accounts Authority, and then there were no non-compliance associated with those also. Next slide. Internal control, the objective of the audit is not to opine on the effectiveness of the internal control, but we do take the internal control into consideration, look at the internal control policies, the structure, what's happening from tone of the top, making sure that the controls are in place to devise our testing procedures. So next slide, please. So as a result of those internal control testing and the testing of our audit results, we're happy to report it's cutting off, but you can see at the bottom of there, it's saying there are no material weaknesses that we would like to report. Last year, if you remember, there were a couple of significant deficiencies related to accrual of expenses. We tested for those again this year. We expanded our testing for that, and we didn't identify any of those. So the controls that management did put into place are working efficiently and effectively. So there were nothing to report this year. Again, there are no corrected or uncorrected misstatements. If there were any, we would have reported that on this page. Again, there are thousands of transactions going through the Parks Authority. So I would say it's not unusual, but the control structure is working properly that yields to there are no misstatements happening. When we come to audit, the balance is provided to us to test. That's a testament to making sure that everything is recorded as it should be under GAAP. I'll give it over to Zach to kind of go through the next few pages of the presentation.
I'll be talking through some of the required communications we have and just kind of overall accounting pricing that we look at specifically during the audit. The first one just being that management is responsible for the accounting principles and items used within the financial statements. And those significant accounting policies are in the financial statements in Note A. So you can kind of review the various significant policies that the authority has. There are no new accounting policies introduced this year. And the application of existing policies did not change from the prior year. We also noted no inappropriate use of accounting policies in the statements. Next slide, please. Another thing that we look at during the audit is related parties and related party transactions. So related parties is kind of a general term, but for most governments, you can kind of view it as transactions with your primary government, maybe other components within the primary government, and even some certain individuals, maybe a board member or people of similar stature. We review these transactions, review the relationships, And during that process, we did not know any related parties that were undisclosed to us before. So we knew of all related parties, for the authority. All the transactions, especially the significant ones, they all had an accounting purpose. There was no lack of business purpose within them, and they followed all the policies and procedures that the authority has related to those transactions. We noted no non-compliance with any applicable laws or regulations that those transactions follow, and we also had no difficulties in identifying any related parties of the authority. Next slide, please. Kind of further in more of a general sense, we did not know any transactions entered into by the authority that lacked any authoritative guidance or consensus, and all of these significant transactions were properly recognized in the financial statements during the proper period. For purposes of this presentation, we also look at unusual significant transactions, and these you can kind of consider to be outside the normal course of business for the authority. So just things that aren't normal from year to year that we may look at a bit more specifically. We did not know any of those types of transactions during the year that came to our attention. Slide, please. Another item that we look at a bit more closely are accounting estimates. These are an integral part of the financial statements and are created by management through various inputs and assumptions used based on their knowledge of the transaction, their knowledge of current events, future events, things that could impact the estimate. And we go in and we just look at some of the more significant accounting estimates, and we consider it significant just based on its impact to the financial statements. And even just the fact that some of these estimates can vary significantly just based on minor changes in assumptions or inputs. So we put a bit more effort into those, to looking at those specifically, which they're listed on this slide here. The two that we note for depreciable lives of capital assets is the first one, and the second one relates to just balances related to pension and other post-employment benefits. There's a few different valuation inputs and assumptions that go into those that we look at specifically. As I mentioned, we kind of look at the key factors and assumptions within those, and just to make sure that they're reasonable, consistent with what we were expecting, and we had no issues related to that. My favorite slide of this entire presentation, just stating that the disclosures themselves are neutral, consistent, where were necessary with last year, and clear to use of the financial statements. Next slide, please. Some other considerations that we need to make both at the beginning of the audit and throughout the audit is independence. We actually do not provide any non-attest services for the authority. Non-attest services you can kind of review as outside of the audit, so kind of in conjunction with the audit, maybe a preparation of a financial statement or something along those lines. We don't perform that for the authority, so not super applicable in this case. But even regardless, we still make independence considerations throughout, and we were not aware of any circumstances or relationships that would cause us to be not independent around the authority, and that we believe we've met all of our ethical responsibilities related to being independent of the authority. I have two slides on some more required communications. The first one just being that we had no significant difficulties speaking with management. We're dealing with management and completing our audit. We also had no disagreements with management related to any accounting policies, auditing standards, or any other kind of significant matters that might affect the financial statements or the report. We did not have any items that we consulted with an outside engagement team. And just like each year, we have a certain list of representations that we request of management. And that's always dated the same day, which was November 26th, 2024 this year.
Just want to point out the foundation for the Parks Authority. We don't audit that. So our opinion clearly states that. It's a small component of the authority, but that's something that's done by other auditors. So there were some delays getting that statement in there, new auditors in there. So that's why you see the date, November 26th. Well, last year it was much earlier than that. So that was the missing piece that we were waiting on for that. Sorry.
Some further communications. There are some cases where management might look to consult outside accountants or other firms to kind of obtain a second opinion on certain accounting or auditing matters. And we did not know any such consultations that occurred during the year. Kind of in a general sense, there's always a variety of matters that pop up during the audit, either related to accounting policy, auditing standards, and we just kind of generally discuss those with the finance team, management throughout the process, just to make sure there's a mutual understanding of what these are, any results of any matters that come up. And of course, we had no difficulties in speaking through those matters during this audit. As of the date of this presentation, there are no fraud, illegal acts, or violations of laws and regulations noted. And finally, there are no events or conditions noted that would indicate any substantial doubt for the authority to continue as a going concern. I promise not too many more slides left. First one related to required supplementary information. This is just what we label it as RSI. This kind of information just kind of supplements the financial statements, but we do not perform, we only apply limited procedures related to these. So we don't specifically provide assurance on these and don't express an opinion on the RSI, but we still review it and inquire with management and review to ensure that it's consistent with the rest of the financial statements to ensure there's no material inconsistencies between that and the other information in the financial statements. And we notice there's such inconsistencies. There is another piece of the annual report as well, which is what we kind of classify as other information. And this is going to be your introduction section and the statistical section. This is another section that we don't really apply too many procedures to outside of just reading through the information, making sure it's consistent with our knowledge of what we've seen during the year, make sure it's consistent with the financial statements and things that we specifically audit, and just make sure the presentation is kind of consistent and aligns with expectations. Similar to the RSI, we have no issues in terms of the consistency of the information or anything like that. The last slide just kind of talks through some upcoming financial reporting changes that are going to be affecting the authority in the upcoming years. As always, we're happy to help kind of discuss and talk through any of these. I do want to point out the top one, GASB 101 for compensated absences. We were lucky this year. We're not having to worry about any new accounting standards coming out this last year, but the compensated absence one coming up next year is going to be a bit of a lift in terms of implementing that for the financial statements this year. With how much new types of leave each government can kind of have. It used to just be sick and vacation leave for the most part, but now there's, I'm sure, a billion different types of leave that a government can provide. And this standard basically goes through how best to record the liability related to that, how to estimate how much it might actually be paid out, at the end of the year. We're expected to be paid out for certain employees, depending. It's going to have a lot of judgment involved. So a lot of, thought through estimates, inputs, assumptions, kind of similar to that significant estimate slide that we talked about. So just want to put attention on that one, as that's going to be a pretty big one coming up here.
This is the slide I'd like to say keeps us employed for the future. They always come up with new things, which is good. Some of these are really good changes, kind of goes along with what's happening currently in the state. This was the final slide, but I do want to thank management, Tanya, and everybody for a smooth audit. Meaning we do ask a lot of information during the audit, and her team definitely rose up to the occasion, get us things timely, and getting us through meaning that the FCPA's financials do get incorporated into the county's financials. So we have to get it done earlier so the county can issue. So again, appreciate you for your efforts in getting us through. And of course, having an unmodified opinion, that's very important. So glad that everything was smooth this year and no findings were issued.
Anybody have questions? Tim?
There were in past years, maybe even last year, I don't know what the term of art was, but it was advice, recommendations, highlights, suggestions with respect to some reserves. There was no such footnote, so to speak, in the audit this year. And could you comment on that?
Sure. I think the last year, are you talking about the finding that was there last year?
I think for example, with respect to the revenue continuation fund or something along those lines.
I think last year was related to how we
accrued.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was there were some expenses that were paid after year, but they related to FY23. Those were not recorded properly in the year where they should be recorded.
I thought at some point there had been a comment about how well the revenue continuation fund was funded. It had not yet reached its 10% suggestion in past years, but okay.
I think it was all related to the accrual of them.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Much.
Administrative, item number 1 is the recommended adoption of the minutes of the November 13th, 2024 Park Authority Board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Allison.
One abstention. Do we have that noted? Heck, we'll move back. All right. Action item number 1 is being held over for next meeting when we have the county attorneys come in. In the Drainsville District, action item number 2 is recommended approval of the transfer of a Massenbrook grant from the Linway Terrace Project to Lewinsville Park.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? That motion carries. Countywide, action item number 3 is a recommended approval of the reallocation of funds originally reserved for the Mount Vernon Rec Center furnishings.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? That motion carries. And finally, countywide action item number 4 is the recommended approval of all proposed fee adjustments as advertised in the 2025 fee schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on this one. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. All right. We had 2 information items this evening, both stemming from presentations received by the Planning and Development Committee on November 13th. First, information 1 is the Planning and Development Division Quarterly Project Status Report, and information number 2 is the Capital Improvement Plan presentation item. Chairman's Matters, I was at an event in the Braddock District last week and speaking to a constituent, and they were talking about volunteer opportunities in the parks and wanted to know about, or were looking for ways to get involved on trails. And they had mentioned specifically to me a group called Appalachian Mountain Club, which is somewhere up in the Northeast, Maine, New Hampshire, one of those states. They kind of have a program set up like our IMA program for trail maintenance and support. I don't know a lot about it. I don't know what it might look like for us. This is a request of staff. I don't know who the right person is, Sarah, to just look into this a little bit. Just start to think through it, what it could look for us. Any thoughts, recommendations? What I know as we try to stretch our dollars and what we can do as far as we can, maintenance is always a challenge. Trails is no different than any others. I know particularly like wayfinding. I know we would like to be doing better than we are. Perhaps this is, an opportunity for untapped volunteer time. So this is something I'd like to look into a little bit. Beyond that, we'll see you all hopefully on Friday.
Just quickly along those lines, Appalachian Trail Conservancy also has lots of
Similar things. Yeah, they promoted this club. I went and looked at it. They have a detailed kind of training program. If anybody want to do it, they'd have to go through this first. That's what made me think of kind of IMA as the framework. Before we let anybody start pulling weeds, they need to know what they're pulling.
Right.
So
Right. Yes.
similar kind of thing here. That's all I have. Sarah, Director's Matters.
Sure. First, I just want to thank Tanya and our finance team for their work on this year on our audit. We have a lot of new staff and there's always new requirements with the audit. So really appreciate the work that they did to get us another clean audit. So
Thank you.
that will start with the first director's matter, and it's another good news story. So the next slide. Okay. So we just wanted to share with you an update on the Wonder Wagon. As you know, the Wonder Wagon launched in 2024, has been extremely successful. We're taking stewardship education out on the road to a lot of different schools, Title I schools, SAC facilities, and other nonprofits and festivals happening throughout the county. To date, we've served about 7,000 individuals at about 100 visits to different groups throughout the year. So as we've been going out to our budget meetings, the Board of Supervisor members are all commenting on the Wonder Wagon, how they love having it at different events. So kudos to the staff. Great program.
Sarah, before you go
Sure.
on, what does planning mean in that last bullet?
Health partners, and then getting the calendar all ready to go.
Great, thank you.
So the next one is an acknowledgement of the opening of the McNaughton restroom and concession building. We might have done this last month too, but
I talked about it. but
you
I
did.
think
Okay.
it's-
Okay. I thought I remembered us discussing it. So great unveiling of a beautiful new facility at McNaughton to be able to serve the diamond fields there in that community. And then if you don't have anything going on, there's a lot of great events happening throughout the park system. We have Santa at Colvin Run Mill, our annual event at Frying Pan, and Winter Wonderland at Burke Lake Park, and many, many other holiday events happening throughout the park system. So hope that you can join us for one of those in the coming weeks. Next slide. We wanted to recognize the work of one of our wonderful volunteers that serves the First Tee program. He was recently recognized, I'm just going to say Coach V, for the great work he does with the First Tee program at Oakmont Golf Center. And we wanted to quickly play a video that recognizes his work with the First Tee program.
Thank you.
That's great. So I understand there may have.
Free advertising.
So I understand that there may have been an issue with the sound on Teams, and we'll post the video so folks can look at it at another time. The next slide is related to our First Hike program, a very successful program that we've been running for several years. It encourages folks to get out onto the trails on January 1st. So look for more information about that and encourage folks to participate in the photo contest, which is related to First Hike. And then we wanted to close out with thanking our amazing staff for the work that they've done in 2024. This is just a sampling of the awards and recognitions that our staff have received both externally and internally. Everything from the Employee of the Year for Fairfax County, which was received by Kim Young, a recognition from the Planning Association on the work that was done on PROSA, and of course, course, recognition about the Stewardship Education Center and much, much more. So many thanks to our staff for all they've done in 2024 to make Fairfax County Parks a great place for our community. With that, I'm done.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Ken?
I'd like to underline that. Thank you to staff for a very successful 2024. And I'll add my fellow board members to that too. And wish you all a very happy holiday season. And I look forward to a continuation of our success in 2025.
Linwood?
What Ken said, man, he said it perfect. I like that. Hope to see everybody Friday, and if I don't see you, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever's appropriate.
Ron?
Happy holidays, everyone. I'll pass for the rest.
Abena?
Thank you all for your hard work. Everyone, happy holidays.
Dr. Carter, are you still with us online?
I sure am. I don't know
All
what's
right.
going on with the video, but thank you, everybody, for your hard work again, and happy holidays.
All right, Faisal?
Well, thank you everyone for the great work, and I'll see you guys around soon.
All right, Mike?
Along what everybody said, but also want to point out, I don't know if the rest of y'all might hear about this, but I've received multiple calls and outreach in the last probably 48 hours about what, asking me why we're closing Hidden Pond, and I've had to explain that we're not closing Hidden Pond. That, it's a budget exercise. We may not close anything, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure these rumors will continue to get started in different areas, but I think there's still a misunderstanding of that entire process. So the heads up was going to the holiday season. It was people understand, but you just have to take the time to explain it to them.
Yep.
So.
Jonah?
Adding to the thanks to staff. I mean, I think today was a really good example of how much work you guys are doing across like so many different topics. And so thank you for all your presentations and happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays to all. Thanks to staff for a great year. Looking forward to a great 2025. In the Reston area, Reston Community Center introduced its welcome wagon, its first welcome wagon
Copycat.
at the holiday,
Exactly what I was gonna
at the
say.
holiday parade. RCC did it first, and they're rolling out two, but the first one is almost ready. Be rolling that out, and then kudos to my friend Lila Gordon, Executive Director of the Reston Community Center, who is wrapping up 40 years of service, last 16 as the Executive Director on Friday. And she's been a great partner to the Park Authority.
Tim?
Kudos to staff for continuing wonderful work. Thank you. And happy holidays to you all.
Maggie?
Again, kudos to staff for a fabulous year, and I hope you all have a lot of rest and recuperation over the holidays. And I do have a little bit of an announcement some of you know already. My husband and I made a big decision and decided to sell the house and downsize. And it's a big house and we've been there over 30 years. So downsizing means we have to find a big place or we'll kill each other. And we have a couple of possibilities. We are not going far. We're going to be in Fairfax County.
Okay.
But there are no large apartments in the Sully district. So I will be stepping down as the Sully representative. Kathy Smith, Supervisor Smith knows. I don't know whether she's found somebody yet. I'm certainly.
Well, I hope she takes her time.
Oh, stop. I have to say, of all of my volunteer, or shall I say, all of my uncompensated employment positions, this is my favorite. I'm going to miss this the most. But it is also giving me an opportunity to step back and go into what my husband calls a second retirement. And since it is the holiday season and I don't believe in waste or anything, I want to make an offer for some gently used items. If anybody would like that, I specifically asked for this hat, but
I've been asking for, I love hats. I'll take you on that. I got upset
this
that we didn't.
lovely Yeti thing, which I've never used.
I got
because
you swag.
hand is too small. If anybody would like, I don't know when you all got that for us.
I don't even know.
Those are great.
Great, they're just great. This, again, very gently used, beautiful sweater. And 2 shirts. So, I mean, I can certainly wear them in memory, but keep in
I think
mind.
our comm SWOT analysis talked about selling stuff.
I know. Sell it, but I don't want to sell it.
FCPA resale.
But the thing is that we really are downsizing. So if you think you might like this, or you know someone who might like this, please take it. My husband said, don't come back with anything. So anyway, thank you all so much. And great, have a lovely holiday. Hope I see you on.
Not going anywhere quite yet, so we're gonna be
This is
excited.
your last meeting though, right?
No, it is not her last meeting, so we get to keep her for a few more.
Big condos in Providence.
We're looking.
One of them is on the radar.
One of
yeah.
them is on the radar. I'm looking at Mosaic District and Ruston.
Downtown Reston is sweet.
See which one of them gives you a better deal.
Yeah, I know. I would say we can talk offline.
Stay on the board until you cut the deal.
Anything else come before us this evening? All right, then we are adjourned. See you guys on Friday.
Yeah, see you Friday.
All right.